Before the intro music begins, I'd like to express my gratitude to all the listeners who have subscribed to and listened to Startup Anthology. The aim of Startup Anthology is to celebrate and share the stories and experiences of startup employees and is not meant to reflect any opinion or comment about any particular company. Our goal is to create a community centered around the unique working culture of startups.
Welcome to Startup Anthology. Whether you're new to the startup world, have a seasoned startup career, or just interested in the culture, you're in the right place. We feature the rarely heard stories from the people who define and embody startup culture. Here's your host, Jeremy Willis. Now, get ready to get inspired.
Welcome to another episode of Startup Anthology. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce our guest, Eric Sapiens. Hailing from Southern California, his story is one of curiosity, persistence, and a relentless pursuit of knowledge. Eric shares how his passion for tinkering and learning new skills led him to an unexpected opportunity here in Austin, Texas, where he joined a cutting-edge construction automation company that 3D prints homes. Get ready to be inspired as we explore Eric's incredible journey. Let's dive in. What's your background? Introduce yourself.
Sure. So my name is Eric Sapiens. I'm from Southern California, city of Paramount. So in Southern California, aerospace is huge, man, or at least it was. I worked in aerospace for a little bit over a decade.
How'd you end up in Austin then?
Oh, man, that's a funny story. The company where I was at, I got in there to do CMM programming. So I was a CMM programmer for over a decade. And that's CMM stands for Coordinate Measuring Machine. Ultra precise, ultra accurate, you name it. So I got in this place through a friend. Actually, it was a friend of a friend. I was doing the metrology. The CMM aspect of this job consisted of this giant automated cell. So I got in there and they were like, "Hey, we need you to do the CMM portion." I'm like, "Okay, cool. I've done this for a long time. How hard could it be?" It was really hard. Traditionally, this role that I did, it was catered to create these automated routines or programs for human beings. And, I really took that for granted when I got placed in front of this job that there was no human beings. There was this robotic cell that ran 24/7 unattended. I had to create these programs that almost had to be flawless because there wasn't a human being tending the machine that could, see imperfections, see potential issues or anything like that. So I had to create something that could be almost as smart as a human being, which is impossible almost.
How did you get into programming? How did you gain that knowledge on CMMs?
When I transitioned into the aerospace field, before that I did warehouses. I was a kid, man, needed a job. And my brother-in-law got me into this warehouse. Eventually, I stepped up, got forklift certified, making the big bucks. Then from there, I stumbled upon an aerospace company. And there I did the same thing. I was a forklift operator. And I noticed that there was these roles called inspectors. I want to try that, So I did. I got the job and I learned how to read material search, how to use a tape measure, a caliper, and a micrometer.
Okay.
It really wasn't a lot of inspection. It was just raw material, just, with the length.
Just verification of dimensions.
Yeah. Reading line numbers on the actual material just to make sure it matches the spec.
Okay.
But it was a very tight process, right? It was ISO and certified. These pieces of material were traceable back to its original larger ingot.
Mm-hmm.
It was titanium. We were a titanium supplier out here in the West Coast for one of the largest mills or largest titanium producers in the world at the time.
Okay.
They had the largest contracts with Boeing and Airbus. So these were big dogs in the titanium world. So yeah, we would receive them in containers off the port of LA. One of these units came back and it was partially machined and I was just blown away, man. I was like, what in the world? What cut that and how, and they had these machining patterns into it. I was so blown away. Back then, the internet wasn't a huge thing, right? Or at least it wasn't for me. So I started my research, man. What is this thing? What could possibly cut this indestructible piece of metal? And that's how I stumbled on into the aerospace and CNC world. So I made that my goal. I told myself I'm going to be a CNC mailman.
Okay.
So I found a tiny little shop, man, a mom and pop shop. The guy who interviewed me, he was the owner of the shop. He was very old school, man. He was probably in his 70s in his office. He had like 500 books in there, very old school looking books. And the interview was very untraditional. He gave me like gosh, what do you call those tests that test your intelligence?
IQ test and personality test, or
It was aptitude. I'll give you one of the example questions. I'll never forget it. I don't know why it lives in my mind rent free. If you're on the moon and you throw a baseball, how far would it go? But yeah, it was just random little questions like that. And I took the test and I guess I passed. He gave me a phone call back.
did they teach you how to program CNC and how to do all that there, or was that kind of on your own?
So I got hired on as a delivery driver.
Oh,
I'm telling you, man, I was a kid. I was
yeah.
a young kid. And in fact, I had to work so much overtime to keep up back then. I mean, this was back right after the great, what was it, like 2007, 2008, the big
The
housing crisis,
the housing bubble burst.
yeah, it was right after that. Finding a job as a teenager was almost impossible.
I'm way older than you. I thought we were about the same age.
Well, we are about the same age, just not in years.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. So yeah, man, I got hired at this company to be a delivery driver, and they said, knock out your deliveries and then you can come in and learn. I'm
Oh,
like, all
wow.
right, cool.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, that was great, man. So this was Southern California, LA traffic. But I knew my ways around the freeways. I knew the rush hours. I grew up there. I knew it very well. I was in the streets riding BMX.
You're a BMX guy. You're my second BMX guy I know now.
Yeah, I listened to the first one and I didn't even know that dude was a BMX guy. But yeah, kept me out of a lot of trouble, but I digress. But so anyway, I was knocking out these deliveries and I was making it back to the HQ so quickly that my lead was very suspect of me. How are you getting back so early? Like, you must not be delivering all of your packages. And I'd be like, double check me, man. I'm not messing around. I would skip lunch, skip break. I would just crank the AC full blast and just go, man. Because, I was excited. I was excited to learn. I wanted to get in there and hurry up and be this millman.
Gotcha.
So I would get back and they told me, before we can stick you in front of a machine, you need to learn how to read prints and learn how to handle these metrology tools. So they stuck me in inspection, the metrology room. So I would get in there and I'd be like, man, I just want to hurry up and learn what I need to learn the bare minimum, go get in front of a machine. Some dude took me under his wing, very tough guy. He's still a friend. I still talk to him today. Really nice guy. He taught me everything that there is to learn as far as reading prints and knowing how to use the metrology tools. So they would stick me in front of a machine and you're an operator, somebody else would come set it up for you. And
Oh, right.
you would stand in front of it and press buttons. And if something was off, you would have to go tell them. You couldn't make adjustments. It's
Right.
just too risky, right? So I just thought like, man, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And it's taking way too long. I thought I was in a rush now.
I understand that. My time in the Navy, they taught us how to operate and then also how to troubleshoot and take care of your own machine. And so the engine room, being an operator somewhere else and having to stop and ask someone else to come help was so frustrating.
Yep. It was, man. So the difference from standing in front of a machine and being in the metrology room was very different. In a metrology room, I had free range to do everything and anything under the supervision of my lead. So I gravitated more towards the metrology room just because it was like a high traffic area, right? It was a more of a go environment. I was in the metrology room for a few days. And then when there was a machine available, they would stick me out there. Did that for like a month or two. I was learning a lot, learning quite a bit. And a position opened up for the metrology to be an inspector. And I said, hey, I would like to apply. Oh, really? Are you sure? You say you wanted in the mill department. Are you sure you want this? And I was like, yes, I'm positive. So I got the role. And once I had the role, I was there. I started stretching my legs out. So I knew I was going to stay there for a while. And I had noticed there was a machine that was just on a corner and no one really used it. It was a CMM, a coordinate measuring machine. And so I asked them, when would you guys use it? And they said, it's too complicated. Like, it just takes too long. I think they just felt their workflow was a lot faster doing it the analog way. I asked like, hey, can I learn it? I would like to figure it all out.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So I was like, let me take a stab at it. So they were like, okay, sure, man. Whenever you have free time. So the following day, my lead, he was a very analog guy. So he's like, all right, I'll give you a quick rundown of it. So he fired it up. And of course, I was taking notes and it taught me how to do it, how to do a thing real quick. And I'm like, whoa. So you mean we can do the same thing we do in an analog way, in a digital way? And it's like, it's all there.
Recorded.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I started coming in 2 hours before my shift and I would sit in front of that thing and just poke around. This metrology software was very intuitive. It had little workflows built into it. So it wasn't very hard for me to pick it up. I learned what vectors were, the Cartesian coordinate system. It was heavy on linear algebra and geometry and stuff that while you're learning it in school, you think you're never going to ever use it. There I was applying everything that I didn't really care about in grade school.
Yeah.
How I got into programming, I opened up Excel once in that same computer and someone told me put a value and these are the symbols you do to add, subtract, multiply, divide. And then it spits out a value. I was like, wait, so you mean you can write down all this data on the column and you can have an equation here on the bottom and it would just crunch it for you. And then you can edit these cell values and it would update automatically. I was like, dude, I was mind blown, man. I was geeking out so much. Wait till I tell my wife about this. So that was my gateway drug, man. That was the bug that bit. It was Excel spreadsheets. I found out what Alt F11 does right away. Sheets and you can write VB scripts or VBA. I couldn't stop after that. That's how I got into programming.
Are you passionate about startup culture? Then head over to our website at startupanthology.com to join the community and share your story. Remember to check out the merch section of our website at startupanthology.com. Support the podcast and the show you love with our exclusive line of tees, hoodies, hats, and more. Trust me, you'll want to wear these at your next hackathon. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, X, and connect with us on LinkedIn. So what are you waiting for? Dive into the Startup Anthology universe and be a part of a community. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
How did, background of Excel get to programming in writing script for control applications? And I can't even, what is the name of the software? Hold on.
Visual Basic.
Hold on. It's not Alan Bradley. That's one thing first comes to my mind. Who's the other?
Oh, you said Alan Bradley. I can't believe you. Back off.
The Germans.
How did I get into it? Well, it was at the company where the automated CNC machine tending automated cell was. So that whole automated cell ran on TwinCat. It was all back off hardware. So there I am, hired on as the CMM guy. And I'm trying to figure out how to write programs for a robot, right? The cell was it was half baked. It wasn't really functioning the way they thought it would. And I was just like, hey, boss man, you mind if I go tinker with it? By that time, I had gotten really good at tinkering with things and putting these things back into their normal state. I was kind of like a child who would tie a string outside of the forest, go run around in it. And when I got tired, I would just kind of follow that string back home and kind of like a safety net and not break the machine, put it back to its original state. I figured out really early that that's everyone's fear, right? You're not going to be able to put it back. I have to mess with it. I have to know how it works. I got into a lot of trouble when I was a kid, man. I was still in diapers. My dad used to tell me a story that I was playing with Hot Wheels and my uncle had a bug. Back then, Volkswagen bugs were huge, right? His was all hot rodded out. And of course, he didn't have the trunk lid on it because the engine would overheat because they're air cooled.
Yeah.
So it was wide open. My dad says that I walked over to the bug and took all the spark plug wires out. And I guess I must have heard someone coming and I just plopped them back in.
That'll mess up the time.
The firing order wasn't right. So my uncle gets in there and tries to fire it up and it's not turning on. My dad quickly added things up and it's like, oh, it was Eric. He must have done something. And I guess he got it out of me. And I'm like, yep. I pulled this and I put him back in there. I was in diapers when I started doing this. So I started tinkering with things. And
reprogramming.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, I was kind of like a natural born tinkerer, man. My dad would buy me tool sets and I would take apart bikes and put them back together, and may or may not had extra parts. So I developed this insight to tinker, man, and whatever it is you tinkered, make sure you put it back, because dad or somebody will yell at you. And I couldn't bear someone getting angry with me or yelling at me.
Well, how'd you learn TwinCat?
Oh man, that's,
Because it's kind of related to how you got into the company here in Austin.
yeah. So again, I was the CMM programmer, part of the same company, right? Like I wasn't doing anything. I asked, hey, let me tinker around with these things. Pretty sure I can figure it all out. But of course, it took a lot of convincing to my boss. My boss is super cool. He's like, all right, let me know what you need. Get if you need licenses, education, whatever you need, let me know. Some engineers at my company were trying to reach out to the integrator and figure out who was going to fix what, right? The cell wasn't working. They were duking it out, like somebody's got to repair this and somebody's going to have to cover the cost. So I asked my supervisor, it's like, hey, while they're all distracted, can I get in there and learn the robot, learn this PLC thing I had never heard of before? And he's like, well, yeah, okay. I knew I had some time, a couple months before the integrators can come out and fix all these things. I thought if I can get in there to learn how to troubleshoot, how to handle the equipment, fix these things myself, then I could be the go-to and my company wouldn't have to worry about this integrator anymore. I'm trying to figure these things out and I'm like, man, this stuff is not as easy as I thought. Some of the software was somewhat familiar. The HMI or the GUI software, it ran VB script. And I'm like, hey, I know this. It's very similar to VBA. So I started making little tweaks, backing up the original project. And my supervisor checks in. He's like, hey, man, how's it going? I'm like, it's not bad. I haven't broke anything yet. I was comfortable with Visual Studio, which is the IDE, the development environment. I was very familiar with deterministic type programming, right? Like you click a button and this chunk of code should execute. And
right.
But with the TwinCat, it was non-deterministic. It's what's called a real-time environment, right? It's always running. As soon as the system powers up, this loop just starts running. You can't just build a loop within your program and then loops indefinitely your system. It just freezes. It was very tough for me to learn a real-time system because I wasn't used to that. Nothing that I had ever come across before was anything like that. So I started Googling, man. I started hitting the interwebs and trying to dig up what these systems were. And if you Google TwinCat, you would get a bunch of search results that were in Swedish or German. And, you try to use the translators, but it wasn't all that great. The TwinCat documentation wasn't very intuitive or easy read for someone who was just first starting off. I really needed somebody to just break it down for me, kind of hold my hand and show me the ropes. So out of nowhere, man, this guy pops up on YouTube and it was in English. He starts making video tutorials for TwinCat. Man, this is a game changer. There's a dude who speaks English and making real easy to understand. His first tutorial was a pizza oven tutorial. And I'm like, dude, I like pizza. I understand how these ovens work.
Okay.
It was all like a simulator, right? And he's just, this guy talking to me, man. I'm understanding things. It's making it so much easier. And I thought, man, I better subscribe to this guy so I don't miss anything. And when I went to go subscribe to him, I noticed that I was already subscribed. I was like, what the heck? It's the first time I ever seen this dude's videos. What's up with that? And so right away I searched through his videos and his content was all automotive content. So I guess I used to watch him back in late high school and it was him customizing these cars, putting custom ECUs on it and whatnot. Back then I was really into that. I was doing that myself in high school. And so I subscribed to him back then. And then I came across him for the same exact reasons many years later, but for a totally different field.
Just to see what I see about him.
Squishy brained. Everyone in the TwinCat community knows who he is.
Squishy brained?
Yeah, squishy brained. Evan Jensen is his name. Yeah. I have no idea why he did those videos, man, but I'm pretty sure he helped a whole bunch of us out because back then TwinCat wasn't very popular in the States. Manufacturers like Allen Bradley, Rockwell, they, those are the what dominates here in the US. So why would you use anything different, right? But for some reason, it was picking up a lot of steam in the States. TwinCat was, or Beckhoff.
There it is.
And
Sorry, it's
very based on that. It's okay. Yeah. So Squishy Brain really, he came in at the right time. I'm pretty sure it was a lot of us who were trying to figure all this stuff out and get it working, trying to learn at the same time. And the documentation wasn't extremely helpful and other videos were not in English. So he came in and he broke it all down, made it easy to use. I didn't have anybody to learn from. So it's nearly impossible, right? It's exactly what I needed. Thank you, sir. So back to the original story, right, of that PO list. I got to a place where I could fix some of these issues and you can get the automated cell functioning correctly. So the integrator didn't have to come in and fix it for us. So upper management found out that it was me. And I was like, oh man, here comes the scolding because I was messing with a multi-million-dollar toy and I wasn't certified, trained, whatever you want to call it. They came down and said, hey, from now on, you're the guy. If we have any issues, you're going to fix it. You're going to figure it out.
Well, there's your education right there. Started off as a forklift delivery driver for a titanium distributor to metrology lab.
Yeah, man.
A multi-million-dollar cell that was on the fritz is actually really cool. I didn't know all that. So how did Squishy Brain get you to Austin?
So by now, 5 years into my role as a controls engineer, I felt pretty comfortable. I learned the system inside and out. I was able to make upgrades, fix issues, and this thing would run 24/7 unattended.
Just exactly what they wanted. Nice.
Exactly what they wanted. It was a two-way street. They got what they wanted and I learned a new skill set. I had always wanted to get into this field and there wasn't a lot of that going on in Southern California. It was mostly in the Midwest. So I was following along Squishy Brain and the guy quit posting. By then I was like, okay, I guess that's that. It's pretty normal for content creators to just move on, right? And they do other things with their life. So I didn't think much of it. I just kept working. And out the blue, Squishy Brain posted. I wish I could find that post. I hate that. Like, hey, for those of you who've been wondering where I've been, this is what I've been up to. And it was a picture of this giant gantry machine that 3D printed homes. So I was like, whoa, that's pretty awesome. And also in that same YouTube post, he said, if any of you have experience with TwinCat, I'm hiring. This was right before the pandemic. I just thought like, hey, what the heck? He's in Texas. This position would require me to move to Texas. I was just in a position where it's like, we can leave California. My wife's family was all in Dallas. She had been wanting to leave.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Texas for a while. They had been there for a while and she would always hit me like, hey, we should go to Texas, greener pasture. I shot my shot, man, with my Squishy Brain. I left him a comment because I didn't know who this person was at the time. I didn't know him personally. There was no contact information or anything like that. So I exposed myself of who I really was on YouTube. I say, hey man, my name is this, and here's my LinkedIn profile. Check me out. I'm interested. So he viewed my profile and I was like, oh snap, like it's really happening. Didn't hear from him. So I was kind of bummed out, but at the same time, I'm like, that's okay. I'll just stay here in SoCal and continue on my path. And about a year later, he gets back to me.
Oh, wow.
And he's like, hey man, I'm Evan. Are you still interested in a role? I forget what he said exactly. He was like, sorry it took so long. I guess the pandemic was going on at the time. So there was a hiring freeze. He reached out to me and right away set up an interview and talked to him, talked to a couple of other people on his team.
I bet I can guess who you talked to. Dan Poole.
Yeah. Super nice guy, super down to earth, very knowledgeable, also the whole entire team, super nice. So the interview, they asked me a lot of technical questions and my personality. They were real easy to talk to, very knowledgeable. So
very gracious too, all those guys.
Yeah. And after I got off the phone with them, the interview, I was like, man, I was super stoked, super excited about the role. Because 5 years, being a lone wolf, I had no idea whether I was doing my job right or wrong, because I didn't really have anybody else to just say, hey, man, you're screwing up on this, or you can do better here, or you're doing great.
How did that go with that team at the startup?
Usually when you come into an environment and people find out that you don't come from education, college, just kind of take it easy on you. They try not to throw fastballs at you. You don't want to overwhelm anyone. This team, they threw me some fastballs, but in a softball manner, if that makes any sense. Dan gave me a tour of the whole code base, and I was like, holy moly, this is huge, complicated. But Dan was so good at explaining things. He laid it all out to me in a nice, easy way to understand. And of course, he also pointed out all the items that were difficult. And he said, don't worry too much about it right now. You'll get it with time. And yeah, the whole team was just amazing. They never, it's like they must have known that I didn't come from an educated background with a college degree. After a while, when they found out that I didn't have a college degree, they seemed kind of surprised. I guess they thought I did have one. I'm not sure. I think honestly, they're just really nice people. They brought me in and never once did shy away from any knowledge, anything that they were working. They would explain to me, and they all did it in a manner where it was easy for me to just grasp and understand. So, okay, cool. I get it. So that was like iron sharpens iron. They really sharpened me up there. I didn't think I was capable of learning anymore. It was just so much that I had learned over the 5 years that I did that in my previous role. These guys are like, oh, here's motion. Here's what is it called? The numerical, we use, what's the acronym? NCI.
Okay. Yep.
The numerical control interpolator.
Yep.
So obviously we were using that. I had so much experience working with gantry type machines, right? Your XYZ, and here's a command, you make it move, G code and whatnot. I came with that knowledge. I understood what a machine had to do. I just didn't know how it was done. And so,
okay.
Yeah,
It's the back end. I think that's how we got to know each other, is because I was working in the testing department. We would work pretty closely with your team. I think that's how we met, was like one long Saturday, Sunday test that you were there on site trying to figure out how to make something work.
Yeah, I remember you were focused on the test, right? And the machine was down. I think that's when every senior controls guy had gone on vacation, and you had two greenhorns there trying to figure out the system.
Right. We got it to do what it was supposed to do.
But yeah, that's how I met you. You guys were like, man, we have concrete in the line or something like that. That was never a good time. Hey, can you fix this issue? We have concrete on the line, no pressure. It's like, oh yeah, oh no,
no pressure.
Don't talk to me, bro. I got to fix this issue. Yeah. It was cool meeting you and your crew. I thought it was really cool learning about your background. I was like, I've never met one of those dudes before. I really wanted to have a conversation with you and learn more about you and your experience.
We're very similar in that, because I don't have my degree either. I worked in technical background and just was like hungry for it and wanted to learn more, moving into different technical and engineering type roles, leading people, civil engineering into electromechanical technician, working with pick and place robots. And a lot of where I learned, my PLC background is all Allen Bradley and Rockwell automation. At that time, TwinCat wasn't a big thing until I got into this role.
Right.
Nuclear power, semiconductor world. And it was all trial, finding someone to take me under their wing and teach me something, hungry, going to Google, Wikipedia, YouTube, trying to figure out how stuff worked and learning it on your own type of thing. And then someone saying, no, don't do it that way. Try it this way instead. And you're like, yeah, what? You can do that?
Very similar. Yeah. Very similar background. Yeah. It's like, man, I was overthinking this. Like, how many times did I tell myself this is much, much simpler than I thought? Somebody more senior would just come along and be like, nope, that's the easy path right there. That's what took me years to figure out myself, but I'm just going to give it to you.
Yeah. It's that mentorship that, are you in contact with any of those guys? Keep up with them at all? Kind of like even now help you think outside the box or overcome anything?
A couple of those guys I still talk to. I try not to bug them. Yeah, this one guy in particular, I'll hit him up and ask him some very stupid questions. And he's like, oh yeah, you do it like this or that. And I'm like, oh yeah, great, thanks. He calls me and asks me a couple things. And I'm like, what? You're asking me? They could be related to automation or automotive. So yeah, I still talk to them, man.
Do you think that that type of ongoing communication would have happened if you didn't come to the startup? Not with the person particularly, overall, anyone else in the other company that you keep up with closely that you're in touch with from previous work?
So yes,
Okay.
on a personal level, just like, hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
Yeah. Let's flip it up a little bit. What lessons did you learn after you left the startup? What have you taken with you from there, from working at the startup where we worked?
I really got attracted to planning, right? Specifically how software developers plan their projects. I really paid attention to them. Every time I was around them, they were super cool. One guy specifically, I would always ask him like, hey, what are you doing? And I guess after a while, he would just see me coming and he would be like, hey, come over, watch me do this, kind of in his own nice way. So I really paid attention to their workflows, how they did everything, really their meetings, their projects, the way they function as a team is like the biggest takeaway for me. So that's really what I tried to become after I left Icon. So working at Nautilus, it was a very traditional type company, very good at what they do, very niche. They had been doing it forever. They know these systems inside and out. They know what they do. They're good at what they do. So going in there and I really wanted to implement this workflow of theirs. And of course, it was very different to this company, but they were willing and allowed me to work in that manner. I failed in the beginning a couple times until I found a nice little groove after self-educating myself. I found my workflow and got really good at it. One thing I'm terrible at is multitasking. You have to work on 3, 4, 5, a dozen different things in a day. But how do you stop a project and get back to it the following day? It takes a while to get back there.
Yeah, that's a huge thing is multitasking is you're focused on one thing, someone come in. This was something that I was really bad about. I learned that there was a rumor. Okay, here comes Jeremy. He's going to ask you a 5-minute question and I have to give him an hour-long answer.
I never knew that.
Okay.
Maybe you and I were both the same. You just came
Okay.
over and I was like, oh, this guy's normal. That was probably me also. Here comes Jeremy. Oh, here comes Eric.
I got a reputation of that because I was so focused on getting my job done that I'd go and ask questions and dig deep into what was going on. And it would, distract someone from what they're doing currently to answer my question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kind of all over the place. I've kind of always been that way. I'm learning everything at the same time and I have many projects going. It helps me to learn a lot about many different things at once. But I hate that these projects don't come to fruition really fast. That's what I've been learning the past couple of years. A lot of these are really cool, shiny tech or projects to just kind of like, take a step back and bookmark it somewhere and get back to it some other day. But just focus on fewer things to push them across the finish line. Yeah, that's what I've been really working on. And thanks to the software crew, I feel like they help me improve in that area.
Like you tell your younger self, like better planning, like take time to plan out.
But if I told my younger self that, like, I probably would have became an expert at one thing. And I'm afraid to go back and tell myself that because I wouldn't have gotten into all the things that I got into, that I had no idea that life was going to inquire those little stupid things I picked up on one time that I was just bored, right? And it was the only thing in front of me. So I preoccupied myself with it.
So
but
the thing that I'm
go ahead.
learning in doing these conversations, interviews is that a lot of people are generalists and are really good at a whole lot of different things, but not experts in any one thing. And that's what makes them good at whatever phase of the startup they're in. Early phases of a startup, you need to be good at a lot of different things. You need to run from being able to do controls to doing hardware, to do plumbing, to do, I don't know, operations, to do inventory, a lot of different things. But then once you get to a phase where you need these specialized roles and people come in that are experts in their field, you kind of learn that it's time to move on because you're not really.
Move on from where? Move on from being a generalist to a more focused role?
Change companies, move on in the sense that I would be horrible at a specialist role. There would be no reason why I'd want to sit there and, work on one type of thing all day long.
And,
Yeah.
and that was my fear. That was my fear, but I got tired of moving, the constant change and picking up and moving. And
Oh, so
I
that's
got
why
tired of
you're
that.
where you are now?
Yeah. So after leaving Icon, I have been trying to change in that aspect of being an expert at not one thing, because it still requires to know a bunch of things in the controls world. But yeah, I guess I'm sticking more towards that field. I guess I found
Oh,
my
you
field, man. This is the field
yeah.
where you just have to know a bunch of things.
I guess you're kind of seeing what you want to do when you grow up, because I still don't know.
Yeah. If I went back in time and told myself like, hey, Eric, this is what you're going to do when you grow up, I'd be like, no, no way.
What would you have told your hindsight being 2020 now, looking back over your career, your time at the startup, your time at in metrology and CMM and all that other fun stuff? What advice would you give to your younger self?
If I can go back and tell myself one thing, obviously I don't want to just say anything because I'm afraid that the future could change. I love myself and my family and everybody who I'm surrounded by and what I do. Uh, think of Biff from Back to the Future when he gets the
Right.
sports almanac, how he changed
Yeah.
the future. But if I can go back and tell my younger self one thing is to read the Book of Proverbs.
Okay. What about the Book of Proverbs? Anything specific, or just go through it? Because there's 31 chapters, and so you could go through it every day for a month.
I've been reading Book of Proverbs over and over for quite a few times in my life. And every time I read it, I pick up something different. It's universal or custom for you and who you are and what you're going through at the time and different stages of your life. So probably as a young kid, who knows how I would have took it. If I would have read it, say in high school, I was really obsessed with, becoming a man, what a man should be, a respectful, honorable man. And so wisdom and knowledge, right? How you carry yourself. I think that would have been huge for me at first, especially not having a father figure at home. I was always looking for examples, and those examples weren't always the best ones.
Yeah.
Really early on, I learned how you can pick up the golden nuggets from someone or a situation and leave out the coal. I feel like Book of Proverbs really would have helped me out with that aspect really early on.
It's cool. It's definitely written for fathers to sons. And so to take that wisdom and that knowledge and pass it on, it would have been good for me too.
Yeah, it's literally Solomon writing a letter to his son, right? And how do you raise someone when you're the wisest king that has ever lived? Unfortunately, his son, he made some mistakes, right? Like, don't listen to your buddies, right? Listen to the older, wiser guys. He went out and listened to his buddies and got into a bunch of problems. It would have been super helpful for me as a kid. Not that it would have been really good wisdom for me. It just reminded me of the question you asked me earlier. What were the biggest takeaways from Icon? How many times did when you were working at Icon and maybe you were doing the part of the job that wasn't your favorite, like maybe swinging a sledgehammer and covered in dust? How many times did you stop, look around and be like, you were about to ask yourself, like, what am I doing here? And you just looked around and just quickly your mindset changed just based on your environment, because it's really cool.
The first time that happened was the first project I worked, I guess the second project I worked on down in Mexico. It had flooded. It had mosquitoes everywhere. It was hot. It was like, what the heck am I doing? And then you turn around, look, oh, there's a giant robot over there. Oh my goodness. And it's making this structure. I think I would have volunteered to do that. And they're paying me. Holy crap. This is cool. I'm going to put it this way. Hour to hour would suck, right?
Yeah.
You would work really, really hard. Day to day would be not as bad because you could actually see progress. But week to week, man, it was mind blowing. If you could get through those hard hours and then have a chance to step back a little bit and say, oh, I did that. That's really cool. That was the mind game. How do you get through those hard days? Those hard days added up to like excellent weeks, and then weeks turned into a month or so and the project was done. You're just like, holy crap, this is cool.
Yeah, I can agree, man. That's really what kept me going on that hour to hour situation. Those times when you focus the lens out and look at the bigger picture, and it's like, okay, this is worth it. This is great. This is awesome.
Well, man, this has been a good conversation. There's a lot here. I really appreciate taking the time to share who Eric is and this experience we had, got to know each other, worked for a company that I don't think I would have done this at all, period.
Same. I never in a million years I would ever think that, first of all, I got a job from a YouTuber.
Yeah. And I appreciate going through a lot of your background and everything. It's awesome.
Well, you're welcome, man. You're welcome.
Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to like and follow Startup Anthology on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast provider. Your feedback means the world to us, so please leave a comment. If you love the episodes, leave your thoughts in the comments on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Also, take a moment to visit our website and grab some exclusive merch at startupanthology.com. Your purchase has helped keep this show going. See you next time on Startup Anthology.